Hi guys, before we start this video, I just want to remind you that I'm a Chinese learner and I am cursed with a very specific accent, and I can't actually change my accent. I'm very bad at mimicking accents, and therefore changing the way I speak when speaking in a different language is very hard for me. So if I mispronounce things, I'm super sorry and I'm working on it. Languages can be learnt in 4 different ways: speaking, listening, reading and writing, and I'm much better at reading and writing than speaking and listening. Let's get on to the video. Some of you guys have been asking me to expand on my own cultural history as a Kaifeng Jew, a tiny group of Jews from Hunan province in China. But how did they end up in China? After all, most know that Jews fled westward. Let's go back. Jews are known to be a diaspora group. A diaspora is a scattered population whose origin lies in separate geographic locale. Historically, the word was used to refer to the mass dispersion of a population from its indigenous territories, specifically the dispersion of the Jews. Jews are native to the historical area the Kingdom of Israel or the Kingdom of Judah, now the modern state of Israel, run by a potato-head madman who appears to be fueled by extremist chaos. Great. The history of this entire area is so vast and complicated, I won't be able to go over the full history in this video, but I need to go over some parts of its history to explain the dispersion which would lead the Jews to leave the area. The Jews, or Israelites as they were known, have concretely been placed in the area by archaeological evidence since at least 1200 to 2000 BC. The first ever written mention of Israel as a collective outside of Abrahamic texts is the Menafta stele. I mispronounced that terribly, I'm sorry. Of ancient Egypt, dated around the 13th century BC. In approximately 567 BC, the king of Babylon, which is now modern-day Iraq, sieged Jerusalem, destroying it and taking Judah. Babylon would later take Jewish shaves, with them being recorded living there due to this around 727 BC. They would be recorded in parts of what was known as Persia. The Roman Empire would also invade and occupy Israel in 70 CE, following defeated Jewish revolts protesting their rule. While some Jews remained, many left, creating a diaspora. We know that Jews would begin arriving in Europe, yet some would journey further east. In Kaifeng, Hunan is where a few would end up. It is widely agreed that this community has existed since the Northern Song dynasty, 960 to 1127, though others argue it could be as early as, if not before, the Tang dynasty, 618 to 1907. It's concluded that those who arrived were Mizrahi of Persian origin due to their prior enslavement, or Indian, or even Jews who had fled from the Crusades. Arriving by sea or land, they settled in the city, and by 1163 a synagogue was built. During the Ming dynasty, 1368 to 1644, the emperor bestowed 8 surnames upon these Jews: Ai, Shi, Gao, Gan, Jin, Li, Zhong, and Zhao. By the 20th century, the Zhong clan had converted to Islam. Sadly, a flood in 1642 destroyed the synagogue. Concerned about saving stone scriptures given to the community that contained the community's own account of itself and origins, a member of the Gao clan dove into the water multiple times to retrieve them. Gao Shen was a major factor in restoring and rewriting 13 scrolls alongside the other clans. Disasters such as fires and flooding would continue to destroy the Kaifeng documents. Some scrolls were obtained from Ningxia and Ningbo to replace them, and another Hebrew Torah scroll was bought from a Muslim in Shaanxi, who took it from a dying Jew at Canton. Europeans wouldn't learn about Jews existing in China until 1605. Matteo Ricci, an Italian priest, would be visited by a member of the Ai clan, Ai Tian, in Beijing, and explained that he too only believed in one God. When Tian saw an image of Mary and Jesus, he mistook it as a picture of Rebecca with Jacob or Esau. Tian told Matteo about the synagogue in Hunan, and Matteo noted how he didn't appear to be Chinese-looking, suggesting that the population had not yet accepted mixing with those in the surrounding area. 3 years later, Matteo sent a Chinese man to visit Kaifeng and copy the beginning and end of their holy books. Upon seeing these, he could confirm that they were the same texts as the first 5 books known to the Europeans. He would later write to the synagogue and explain that the Messiah had already come, but in response, they stated that it wouldn't be for another 10,000 years. The old rabbi was concerned about lacking a trained successor and offered Matteo his position if he would convert, and Matteo declined. Another 3 Jews stopped by his house and became baptized, because when the rabbi died, his son had inherited his position, and they all felt that the son was not ready or knowledgeable enough to take it on. The Kaifeng rebellion of the 1850s would lead to yet another dispersal, but the Jews would later return to the area. Father Joseph Brooker, a Roman Catholic researcher in the 20th century, notes that there were only between 10 to 12 Jewish families in the 16th to 17th century. A greater number existed in Hangzhou, possibly loyal Jews who went south with the soon-to-be emperor. Kaifeng Jews managed to preserve their traditions and customs despite isolation from other Jews. In the 17th century, intermarriage between Jews and other ethnic groups, such as the Han Chinese, and the Hui and Manchu minorities increased. In 1849, a researcher noted that the Jews are quite Chinese in appearance. J. Al Lieberman noted how they still had a burial ground for their own. However, due to political issues in China in the 1980s, research into the Kaifeng Jews became a standstill. The last census revealed around 400 official Jews lived in Kaifeng, now estimated at some 100 families, totaling approximately 500 people. Up to 1,000 residents have ties to Jewish ancestry, though only 40 to 50 individuals partake in Jewish activities. Some descendants of the Kaifeng Jews have absolutely no idea of their ancestry. For example, they would only really know that their parents and grandparents told them that one day they would return to their land. One of the few traits that differentiated them from their non-Jewish Chinese neighbors was the fact that they wouldn't eat pork. Xu Yinan was a Chinese woman who discovered her Jewish ancestry after her mother attended a conference on minorities in 1981. And said that her family didn't eat pork or shellfish and her grandfather always wore a blue skullcap. The modern-day political landscape of China has led to fear among Jews. This specific article that I'll be reading for talks about a man called Amir who is celebrating Hanukkah yet in secret because he's worried that Chinese officials will come round, which they often do around religious occasions, to enforce a ban against Judaism, pressuring him to renounce his faith. And it notes that sometimes he's even called in for interrogations. It's government policy. China doesn't want to recognize us as Jews, one man who dreams of training as a rabbi in Israel told The Telegraph. Their goal is to make sure the next generation doesn't have any Jewish identity. Astoundingly, Kaifeng's Jewish heritage survived dynasties, wars, natural disasters, and the Cultural Revolution, when many destroyed genealogical records to hide their lineage. It also notes in the article that they've managed to go without a rabbi for more than 150 years. In Kaifeng, stones engraved as far back as 1489 with the community's beliefs and ancestry have been removed from the spot where they once marked a 12th century synagogue. This is the synagogue we briefly discussed during the previous segment of the video. However, it's important to note that this kind of suppression isn't specifically meant to be anti-Semitic, and it's unusual within China. The article states the country sheltered thousands of European Jews fleeing World War II, and today many Chinese view Jews favourably, typecasting them as an affluent bunch in influential positions: bankers, politicians, lawyers, doctors, film directors. This researcher notes the absolute bizarre turn of events. In fact, the history works in their favour because Jews were treated like garbage all over the world, but the Chinese accepted them. The issue herein is China's rampant crackdown on religion, as seen with the quote-unquote re-education camps for religious people and minorities who don't assimilate to the government-mandated way of living. I separate Jew and the concept of a Jew into 3 different categories that can be distinguished yet are closely interlinked. Number 1, Jew, a person who follows and practices Judaism. Number 2, a Jew, somebody who is ethnically Jewish, and number 3, any of the customs and traditions that come along with being a Jew. It's very hard to separate these 3 things because they complement each other and are very interlinked. Of course, there are ethnic Jews that don't follow Judaism or don't even believe in a God, but many of the traditions and practices that may come about in their family can be very much influenced from Judaism itself. It's hard to separate these things. So while China's motivation is not to suppress specifically Jews for ethnicity, they are taking away a massive chunk of their cultural makeup. And this is a complete diversion of what happened way back in the Ming Dynasty, where the emperor even bestowed them their own Chinese surnames to assimilate them into Chinese culture without taking away their own traditions and customs. China is one of the few countries in the world that hasn't had a consensus of anti-Semitism, and yet this crackdown on religion is inadvertently placing them into that category of anti-Semitic countries because of their militant view of religion and how it must be smushed. There are currently Chinese Jews all across the country trying to raise awareness for the way that they're being treated and how this is affecting them negatively, ever since this is a group of people who came and managed to assimilate into a culture completely peacefully and integrated parts of said culture into their own. Some Kaifeng Jews hope to leave to go to Israel for a better life, however we know the situation over there isn't much better. As well as this, Israel does not recognize them as Jews by birth, and they are required to formally convert to Judaism in order to receive an Israeli citizenship under the law of return. With this video, I hope to raise awareness for the existence of this tiny group of Jews in China which defeated all the odds between oppression and natural disasters to continue on their traditions. And my own history begins there. From the mountainous region of Hunan province to the seaside shore of Qingdao and eventually all the way over to Britain. I hope that we can raise awareness for these people and campaign against what they are currently dealing with right now.